let's see, Ravi, would you like
Right.
to share with us what you have prepared for us?
Oh, sure. Okay. The title of the poem in response to the prompt is Mockingbird. It's the midnight hour when garage doors whir open, gates swing automatically, and the jarring groan of tires upon the tiled floor under the porch wakes up the dog resting at the door. Night stretches deliberately upon its hind legs, shakes its body with shiny flecks, scattering off its body. The sudden commotion stirs into protest, a mockingbird. Why do I moan in my sleep? My voice no more emanates in tune with the cresting harp, strummed continuously beyond the baying dog. Dreams are cramped feet trudging over snowfields where hidden and open crevasses crisscross. Do you hear the crackle of ice? Listen. Stop. Can you hear the sloth bear trudging? The marmots are silent too. I need to pass under the stalactite. Drip, drip, drip. The sugar canes are all gone. The open-hooded cobra slithers through between stumps towards nowhere. I can only guess at its presence as it slithers through dry leaves. Where shall I hide? The Jade Emperor burned with a cane field. Light the sky then, where the stars have burned in a million fireworks. The carbide fumes waft acridly into my lungs. Can you hear the bursts? The sky is crumpled, a dying ember parachuting in a slow swirl down. Catch it if you can. I wake up when silence ensues, disturbed. The tree where I rested was felled when I was foraging food elsewhere. The part of Bougainvillea where I hide now is no refuge. I need to pretend to be another. What can a mockingbird be? How much more diminutive can I grow? Will I find a world where my throat will unfreeze? Listen, listen. Can you hear me caw? Thank you.
How much more diminutive can I grow? Wow.
But that was nearly every line had almost like a sound in it, not the sound of the words, but excuse me, a sound like the crackling and the rustling of the leaves. And there's a lot of folk that love that line, night stretches deliberately. That was such a great line, that one, really wonderful. And the pot of Bougainvillea where I hide now, I can just imagine a little bird sitting in there. Beautiful poem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ravi, where did you find inspiration for this piece? I mean, where do you hear the mockingbirds? Do you have those in Malaysia and India?
There is a bird that keeps calling day and night just outside our window here in Kuala Lumpur. I have not been able to identify it. It's almost like an SOS, two short chirps and a longish one. And mostly it's active at night and throughout the night almost ceaselessly. And mockingbird is known to call during the night. And I just used it as a metaphor. I know that I don't see mockingbirds here. Though I've seen them when I was in my travels, when I've been in US, but not here, no.
Daddy, Would you know if who would be calling at day and night, morning and night? Yes,
Guol, guol. It's
Ravi.
a blackbird that looks a little bit like a crow, but small, a little smaller, and it's very shy. It hides among the leaves. It's a really dark blackbird, and it's got a very strident cry. Guol, guol, guol.
No, no, it's not the coil. It's not the coil.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen this bird. Um, I've been trying to find out, identify the calls, but so far my research hasn't yielded much of a result.
So now I'm so curious because, as you probably know, my dad and I enjoy listening to bird calls. And so, Ravi, my challenge to you is if you can record the sound of this mystery bird.
Yeah,
And
I can. I can.
oh, that'll be so exciting. Thank you so very much for your lovely poem that actually took me to many different places and spaces. I actually thought about the marmots that I saw in Colorado as well.
Mhm. The marmots I saw plenty on my mountaineering trips. Uh, they especially are plenty. I mean, they are crowd the entire valley in the Suru Zanskar region. I've been their neighbor almost for weeks together whenever I've been in base camp. So they've always been, they're part of my subconscious, I think. Um,
All right. Who would like to share next? Ian, your hand was up, sort of.
Hang on, tentatively. So everyone's being shy today.
Oh,
So,
Ian, it's great to have you back. Welcome back, Ian.
yeah, I missed it. Sorry, I was trying to get back for last week's midday thing, but I had to go into town, something to do with new passports or other. So yeah, there's a threat. I might be visiting you soon. I'll be getting a new passport, so I'll be out and about. I got two for you, and one's a bit tongue in cheek, and the other's altogether more serious. I think that has a trigger warning. But actually, I just noticed they both mentioned the opening line contains a reference to voices. So, first one is a little bit. I think I wrote it as a bit of a humorous thing. It's called Other Voices. These voices play inside my head, a cacophony of inner dialogues, visitors from other worlds, from another different time ago. They beckon constantly just for the conversation or instigating arguments, big questions concerning politics and philosophy, like the time when Socrates popped in for a bowl of wine and a chat, and it was, do you agree with this? Or why do you think that? Questions, 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 an endless stream of refutations and skeptical concatenations. By the time that he had to leave, I just had to ask Socrates, pass the hemlock, please. So and the second one, which I wrote only a few days ago, actually directly connected with the prompt from Finn, which is, I think, for a poet, listening is an absolutely perfect prompt. Is what we all should be doing. And this one, I think, has a trigger warning, has a reference to suicide, and it's called Down the Line, Recollections of a Samaritan. Fractured voices whisper down the winding line, trickling into my straining ear, searching out for grim clues, hints of the source of a broken, fragile mind that is reaching out for redress. And while these voices unburden themselves of that black cloud of steep unhappiness, that air of storm and drang, I reach out for further questions to unlock the floodgates, holding back the dark gathering pools of festering depressions without any sense of reprimand. And so it seems like just any conversation between equals, no interrogation to extract confessions of private intimacies dragged from a racked and tortured body under the burden of duress. And so it seems the voices continue their soft, faltering exhalations through the earpiece pressed to my head, while I, with one thought in mind, wait for that ideal moment to ask, as my training had commended, the final question on my list. Have you ever, in your darkest hour, considered committing suicide? Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Two very different and but poems that I think work well together. You work well together. We all have our inner dialogues. Although I think it's part of being a poet, isn't it? Having inner dialogues of some description or other. And I think we're missing tricks now. We're having glasses of wine when they used to have bowls of wine. That sounds much more tastier to have a bowl of wine, please. The second one, yes, it's darkness in it, isn't it? But still hearing inner voices and things like that. Lovely, great stuff, Ian.
Cheers, thanks, Finn. Yeah, well, I was kind of like from my experience is really as a Samaritan, which I did some a while back. I did it volunteering for about 5 years. You know, with the in Reading. I'd do that, you know, whatever it was 2 or 3 times a month. So, you know, go in and you do like a 2 or 3 hour shift. Yeah, I was yeah, you had to listen, you know, and you had a selection process, so they were making sure that you had the right sort of I suppose kind of mental outlook, and also we had about 3 months training sort of over the weekends, so they were very thorough, and also like the support mechanism, because you know like they had like backups, people that you could sort of talk to, you know, if you had a particularly bad or dark call or a session, you know, because literally when you're listening to somebody for an hour, you're kind of going down with them, you know, by the end of an hour, you know, you're actually almost at the bottom with them, sort of trying to be empathizing, getting them, trying to get them to open up and talk about it. So sometimes, yeah, you really have you needed a shoulder to lean on, you know, like a fellow volunteer, or they always had somebody on calls, one of the more experienced senior volunteers, you know, team leaders that you could call up and sort of go over any particular things that you know that happened during that, you know, during a particular shift. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Ian, for being a source of support for those of us who live with our traumas and our challenges. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Finn. All right. Rick, would you like to go?
Hi there. Good morning, everyone. And a special tribute to not only our host, but our marvelous guest. And in the honor of his concept of listening, I was thinking about listening, and I went to a place that means a lot to me. This is called, and again, I dedicate it to our guest and our wonderful host, The Silence of Beethoven. Listening to the far-off music of the hills, roiling with the timekeeping of the sweeping trees and the whispering of the swaying grass, hear the royal music that rings in the corridors of heaven, bathing, enriching the spinning, heaving earth below, the waters susurrating the sky's glorious ululating truth, and the clouds' majestic migration, Beethoven casts his eye on the peaks and holy spires that surround him, grasping the piano, his jaw set athwart its ringing resonance. His heart is again free to soar, and his hawk eye spies the throne again. He hears the ode to joy, the chorus of the whole grand universe, and as he listens fiercely, it opens to him. Have you heard the music of the hills and the forests ringing all around us? It's been there long surrounding us, and always is singing its ever song before us, before our hungry ears, on our hungry souls. Silence of Beethoven. Thank you.
Wow, yeah, I can hear the beautiful landscape there, linking it to the music. It just all flows into one there, and always singing its evening ever song. It is, you know, for someone who likes it outdoors, a little bit like I do. Not too much for all day hikes, like, but just, you know, just enough. It's and living in the country, I can relate to a lot of that. Fabulous words, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. One of the most scenic poems I've heard you read and create. And thank you for the sights and sounds, which is the amazing part of Beethoven's story is that he goes his life with deafness, and yet in memory, I think he was still able to share such amazing sounds with us. Thank you. Jennifer, would you like to go next?
Thank you. I'm reading Hold That Note. This was written in April last year during Singapore Poetry Writing Month. Listen, hold that note. Let the note linger. Hold it in your fingers. Fold it into a paper boat. Let it float in a sand castle moat. Hold on now. How about a ball? The kind where Prince Charming falls for you. The night jar's sounds know no bounds. Sight unseen, it can't be found. It breaks the night's silence with its calls. Juk juk, couplets as night falls. I note each note again and again. To report noise, I have to document for them. The voices quiver, cause shivers, speak in demi-semi-quavers. I didn't catch the gist, let alone the breath. Like willow wisps, they ensure I'm lured into their den. I run and run after them, breathless. Then, listen. The inner voice speaks. I hold my thoughts, the ones I had fought, whether to listen to all these years. We went through glistened tears to suppress, not express. Why is it so hard for my inner voice to impress me, you, him, her, them? Avoidance lingers. I really must void that dampener. I must take note what the voice in me emotes, tinker with what I have within. Forget withouts, their others' whims. Listen, I think it's Tinkerbell. She says I don't need alarming sirens or other voices to break the silence. I just need to listen to and revive the still small voice in me. Let it survive. Arrive as it pleases, bells and whistles, whispers. Or well done, laugh out loud laughter. Listen, give a shout out for me, for you, for him, for her, for them. Listen, hold that note. Let the still small voice linger. Get louder, bigger. Thank you.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening. Hold that note. Wow. Yes, excellent. Yeah. The avoidance lingering, and that's, and also that still small voice. We've all got that still small voice. It's great interpret. You know, when you think of listening, it's not just listening with your ears; it's listening to what inside as well in your small voice. Yeah, that wonderful reading. Wonderful. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much for what a beautiful for that reading and the dramatic delivery that you gave us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm still very childish. I go back to Tinkerbell days. Yes.
Look at Diane's face. That says it all. Of course, we have to go back to our childhood and reference our child, right? She's one of the voices that resides in each one of us, and deserves to be heard. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clive, do you have something for us today?
I do. Yeah. Okay, so this is a bit different to what I usually do these days, because this was written a few years ago now, actually, and it just fitted the prompt of listening. So I dragged this up and thought I'd give it a go. And it's actually a reaction to, I'm going to say, the outright elitist snobbery that pervades the British poetry scene, where people like myself really have to fight to be recognized because we're not educated. People can understand our poems without having a degree in Greek mythology or whatever. And we come up against a lot of, let's say, obstacles. I've seen some things in my early days. I mean, I don't go to this type of event now because I just can't stand the snobbery, but you know, a lot of my friends are rappers and you know, people who are brilliant with language but not necessarily well educated. And I'm not well educated. I barely went to school because of illness and everything else when I was younger. So this was aimed at that type of people, and it's called oh, hang on a minute, me things falling over, right, and it's actually called Listen. My English isn't perfect. I don't have a wide vocabulary, so please don't send the grammar constabulary to come knocking at my door. There are verbal wars as to whether it is was or were, and if I err by saying less instead of fewer, know that my intentions are pure. I know you want me skewered if a word is out of place, and just in case I should lose face, debase the language as it sinks without a trace, I apologise. I get things wrong, and I long to be the perfect poet, but I never will be, and well, I'm aware of this. But I have to share what's on my mind, so turn a blind eye and cock a deaf ear if you see or hear a grammatical error. Don't treat it like an act of terror. It will not kill you, but my sarcasm might if you go too far. Get too particular, brand me as ridiculous because I barely went to school. I'm not a fool. I know words are a poet's tool, but if you understand my meaning, then it's cool. If you don't treat me as a criminal who butchered your language and ate the verbs in some sort of sandwich. Take a look at yourself. Check your bandwidth, because maybe I'm transmitting data faster than you can handle it merely by moving with the times. You're too set in your ways, yearning for long lost days, and your eyes glaze over when this pleb takes over, never knowing as the words are flowing if I'm showing ignorance to the elite, a complete lack of knowledge of the rules that would allow me to compete, not kiss your feet to feed conceit. At least when I'm on stage, my message is received, and you don't see the misplaced apostrophes hidden in my rage. Don't try to silence me with your mocking tones as you moan about declining standards, evolving language, and the dumbing down of poetic art. Remove class prejudice, that will be a start, and could maybe, just maybe, bring about a change of heart. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've all come across these type of people in our lives in our poetry world. I recently, I have done a few times, attended an open mic thing with the Aberdeen University English literature crew. Most of them, they're really nice kids, a lot of them, but you sometimes can just sense a little bit of snobbery amongst their 20-year-old heads, you know, they haven't lived in the world yet and they're gathering it, yeah. But it's a great, like, misplaced apostrophes, you know. And my sarcasm might kill you. That I'll kill people with sarcasm. That's a great way to go. Thanks, Clive. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Please, Ravi.
Clive,
It is incorrect
see,
grammar.
literature, the scene of literature has always depended on some kind of sponsorship or the other. And once the royal houses stopped sponsoring literature, universities, I guess, took over and started trudging out poets. Poets started coming out of universities, and some kind of a puritanical, systemic evolution started happening in the publication of poetry. See, publication again means, only a few people can get in. Not everybody can get in. Earlier on, there were just salons when Sydney or Spencer or somebody else was reading. To how many people did they read? Only to a few people, their own little coterie. But luckily, today, thanks to the media, there are more poets writing, there are more poets being heard too, and there's more general participation in the act of writing and reading and listening to poetry. I don't think you need to be apologetic at all. There's a great revolution that's happening in literature as far as I can see. It spells very good for poetry. It's a very healthy thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's great. And, there are so many talented people around who are not recognized by these people who think that their poetry is the only type of poetry. I've actually seen, and obviously I wouldn't name any names, but I've actually seen a host of a poetry night in one of the posher towns in England, let's call it that, who stood up after a newcomer had gone on the mic and done the stuff, and it was a bit novice-y, and it wasn't what they would call great poetry, but it was their first time ever standing up at an open mic, and they probably never went to another one because the host did no more than stand up and say, "We don't really want to hear that sort of stuff."
See, the real last line was last critical line that was heard about poetry was by Longinus when he said, "Sublime is the only quality that one should look for in any act of writing." And how many of these great poets are sublime? They get recognized, they become poet laureates perhaps, but do we really, when we read them, say, do we sit up? How many, when you read a whole collection of poetry, how many times do you sit up and then say, I've come across this marvelous word which touches me to the core?
Yeah, I mean, the people that touch me to the core are people who, they're performance poets rather than page poets, and they, it's difficult to put it into. I like page poetry, don't get me wrong, and I read a lot of poetry, but like you say, very few of them actually touch you to the core. I could name a few people who I could watch all day, every day, and some of them would struggle to get published, and it's crazy. But I had one particular individual who publishes, he runs a competition. Again, I won't name it. I think anybody who's ever come across him knows what I'm talking about. He runs a competition and he publishes books, and he is an absolute arse. And he started trolling me on social media because I wasn't educated, and he's got a degree in this, that, and the other, and blah 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 blah. And he literally started trolling me on social media. And I came home from work one day, and he was laying into my friends. One in particular is a very good poet. He's performed at the Royal Albert Hall, and he's been in the National Slam finals and everything. In fact, he was runner-up in one, and he was laying into him and calling him all the names under the sun because his poetry wasn't poetry. And and that it was him and one other person that sort of inspired me to write that poem.
Thank you so much for sharing your inspiration, Clive. I come from a school of thought that the arts belongs to all. And poetry, like every other form of art, is a language that belongs to all. And I'm very proud that my daughter is a linguistics major. And one of the things that she's been studying and interested in researching and promoting is different Englishes. Of course, this is a English poetry writing platform for the most part, but the fact that we can respect the diversity of voices here, presented, written, is something that I'm very proud of, that we can hear one another's voices, because how boring or how myopic would it be if we only heard people of like minds and voices? We have no opportunity to grow. But because of each one of you, from your diverse backgrounds and your willingness to share your voice, we are blessed and have the opportunity to consider something other than us. So thank you, Clyde. And Pose.
I sometimes like going to places where I know that there's a few snobs in and just throwing the cat among the pigeons when I'm reading to anyway. So
You get them, Finn. You get them.
yeah,
I'll just ask Lucian to like mute them and send them into the lobby.
I used to perform at a festival quite regularly, and indeed one time some of the performers failed to turn up, so I ended up doing an extended set, which I thought was quite generous of me. Um, and then it got taken over by a group who had got an Arts Council grant to run it, and it only now has poets who actually go out and have meals together, or go to, you get messages from very posh poets saying, "Oh, you weren't there. We were at 3 a.m. in Manchester having cocktails," and it's just such incredible snobbery and excluding local people to the festival. I won't name the festival or the people, but yes, this it's just like a little clique, and yes, it just drives me mad. But I don't try anymore. You can come to the festival if you pay to go to our workshops, and then you can perform. Bollocks, sorry, but there you go.
Richard, do you have something for us?
Yes, I've changed it, as I often do, because Ian's poem inspired me. This was really one about a period where I wasn't being listened to. And oddly, I wrote it about that period, and it was prompted by one of these posh poets trying to, what was the word Clive used, but sending me nasty messages on Facebook. I decided I was starting to get depressed and ill, and I thought, I'm not going to let that happen. What I'm going to do is write it out in a cathartic way. So this is about a period of my life where I wasn't listened to. On the edge. He climbed onto the edge of the parapet, the one he had chosen so carefully beforehand. He moved slowly forward and stood on the edge. Looked down so far, so very, very far. He could see people tiny like ants. He would have to wait for quiet. He did not want to hurt people. When he fell and landed, he felt battered, bruised, labelled, despised, bullied, ignored, isolated, lachrymose. He was not human, not really. No real rights of his own. He had had hopes that had been crushed slowly, repeatedly, inexorably, personally and professionally, closing in on him till he could bear it no more. His stomach churned, he felt panic in his heart and gut and mind and soul, despair and no wish to go on. So low, aware of the waste, yet he could not go on, no more pain, rejection. He was done, the time had come. And then he heard the sound of footsteps approach. Help was coming. voices talking soft, reassuring words of encouragement. And so he jumped. And I really was starting to feel ill because of this spamming on Facebook, and by this very renowned poet, and I thought I must write this to get it out of me, to get the pain and rejection out. And then I've got a little lighter one, but it does involve listening, and it's called Snooker Game Interrupted. Guested in Hull, a gig that was fun, plenty of folk in, friends around, music fine. I went between the bands, first set went well. Folk listened and laughed, went and sat with the wife near a snooker table, two lads in their 20s having fun. One playing better than the other, but both having a ball, both full of lively joy. We interacted with them and laughed when they were daft. They seemed to like the two oldies joining in. Then my second act, I did the intro chat. I saw that they had stopped playing, were stood there leaning on their cues, watching me on stage. I did naughty comedy stuff and they listened and laughed, as did the rest of the room. I was well pleased when I came off. They said my poems were great. I was happy with that. But later Eileen told me she had heard them say, I want to listen to this, let's stop. And the other lad had said he did too. Now that to me is a result and filled me with delight. Can't ask more of an audience than they interrupt a game to listen and enjoy my stuff. For that, the drive to Hull and back was well worthwhile for me. And that changes. I was going to do that one anyway with another silly one, but Ian and Clive both inspired me to change. Unfortunately, nowadays we have phones and computers, and I don't have to spend 20 minutes looking up paperwork, do I? So that's great. Yes.
Finn.
Thank you, Richard. Well, have to wait for quiet. I consider it a suicide attempt and everything. And then the end, someone talked to him, then he jumped. Wow, that was very unexpected ending.
Well, I felt when I
Sorry.
wrote it, I felt actually it wouldn't have any impact if they talked him down and everything was right, because his life, well, my life at that time was I had a severe clinical depression, and I felt to be true to him, he had to die.
Well, quite right too. Yeah, it works great that way. If this doesn't sound awful, it works great. Yeah, but as a piece of work, it does work. And the second one, we've got greater compliment can you get than someone stop playing a game to listen to your poetry. That's excellent. Two different stuff, man.
I drove home thinking, I'm glad I came, because sometimes you think I've driven an hour to do 6 poems, and you think, was it worth it? And it's 11 o'clock at night, or even midnight, because if it finishes at 11, I'm home at 12, And sometimes you think, why do I do this? But that night I was thinking, that's why I do it,
It was a standing ovation in the middle of the work. They were just standing listening. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we have Diane Murray Ward.
Hello, can you hear me? All right. Wonderful prompt, Finn. And let me just say this. It's so interesting what Ian Mack said. I have physicians in my family and medical psychiatrists, and they also need support because you listen to all of these issues, all of these problems, and so they would have a support group amongst themselves that would allow them to just really decompress. And I worked in psychiatric hospitals, and it's essential for the support group to also have a support group that you don't have to explain everything and that already understand when you're working with patients how to refresh and renew yourself as well. The best way to operate if you want to work at all with anyone that you think needs assistance. So I wrote a very short piece to the prompt listening. It's a wonderful prompt because it's something we all do, especially as poets. We listen probably extra hard with a different kind of tape. Very short. Listening requires energy and an attempt at lucidity. See how tired the human race is. Listening requires an ability to want to comprehend. See how tired the human race is. Listening costs your attention. Listening costs time. See how tired the human race is. Is it too late for the human race? For sanity to prevail? I wonder sometimes because I see how tired the human race is. Thank you.
Whoa, how tired the human race is. Listening requires energy. It certainly doesn't. It costs more energy when you're like me, profoundly deaf, where you've really got to listen most half the time anyway to things. It's that sums it all up. It costs time as well. You need time that's well spent though is to actually listen to things, and it's time well spent. A wonderful poem, Diane. Thank you.
Diane, most of the time, it is our arrogance that doesn't let us listen. Listening is an activity, a human activity that begins when somebody is sympathetic, when somebody's heart is ready to participate, to communicate. But most of the time we are in love with our own voice, and then we listen to nothing but our own voice. The ability to listen to others comes rarely, and when it does, I guess the human world is much more um, um, much more, how shall I put it, humane.
Thank you, Diane. Listening requires energy. So I will read, and then I haven't forgotten Lantern Carrier, who has joined us, but he has made a special request. So after we're done recording, we will listen to Lantern's poem and feedback. And we'll, after I go, I'm going to invite Finn to do his set, and I'll close out the show, and then we'll listen to Lantern. All right. So I listened to something that my dad wrote. Dad, I'm going to read your reflections on Chinese New Year. So we're still in the process of celebrating Lunar New Year, and the Chinese, which I'm a part of the Chinese race, we celebrate that. So this is from Tan Tuan Kok. Our Chinese New Year was quiet and low key, very different from when we were growing up. I remember the New Year Eve reunion dinners with traditional dishes like japchae, braised abalone, soy sauce duck, and japware soup. After dinner, we were given ang baos by the older folks and changed into our new pajamas. Then we piled into Father's Morris 8 license plate S2182 and drove into Chinatown. With windows up, we drove through a barrage of exploding huge red firecrackers hanging from the long bamboo poles from second floor shop houses. Phew! Somehow, Father managed to drive us safely through the noise and acrid smoke. The next morning, we woke up early and changed into new outfits, had a breakfast of cheng teng and nian go fried with beaten egg. The belief is to start the new year eating something sweet, and then the endless visits to relatives and close friends. At each home, we were piled with pastries, sweetmeats, chocolate-filled gold coins, and F&N fizzy soft drinks. My favorite one was Cherry Aid, Tan Tuan Kok. My response after listening to Dad's poem was a response. So Dad knows that I am not a fan of Chinese restaurants and loud noises because um, autism actually runs in our family. And so I, yes, I have my sensory challenges. So this is called Red. Red. Mall decorations, tin music blast. Where's mom? Go find Jaga uncle. Red. New itchy clothes. Look nice, nice. Red. New claw marks on skin. Itchy, itchy. Red. Stop scratching or else. Red. Why beaming? Pretty girl must smile, smile. Red. Children lined up. Good or bad, good or bad. Red. Why your girl don't behave? Bo dua bo soy. Red. Color of shouting. Close ears. Red. Color of anger. Close eyes. Red. Hard-boiled eggs on bruises. My cow, don't cry. Red packets. Ang pao with gold and dollars. How much money can I save? And then finally, I would like to read something that I wrote yesterday. I'm just a curio. You asked me about my abuse, wanting me to shift my mind, devein my emotions. Why do I keep hope? Why do I keep believing that someone would want to hear my story, to hear me? You say you want me to be well, yet your lack of empathy in your eyes demanding I disassociate. If I don't, I am dismissed, I'm hysterical, I'm unreasonable, I'm illogical. Just the facts, ma'am. These restraints constrain, subjugate, strangle, enslave my heart in chains. I'm the cat that died again.
Excellent, excellent. The first one about New Year, it's like, that's up here too. It was a huge thing in Scotland, a New Year. I remember, I remember 1 year taxiing. What used to happen, people used to have a house party every weekend, and then it would be right, next week, everyone comes to my house, and then next week, everyone comes to my house. And genuinely, once, 1 year, maybe 20 odd years ago, it went on up until the end of March. I was still taking people up from house, but I never got that. You know, you see them. Why do you have to go and see them? And the same people, anyway, big, great poems. And yeah, I understand your response. I don't suffer from autism, but I'm not often fan of huge crowds and not too much noise either myself. Thank you.
And thanks, Dad, for sharing your recollection of your childhood. I'm glad you had fun. All right, Finn, we have come to you. You've listened so closely to all our work. Thank you so very much for your listening ear and for your marvelous prompt. What do you have for us?
Right, I have 5 pieces. They're all, apart from one, they're all quite short. And the first 3 is actually from my first book, Once Upon a Time There Was, Now There Isn't. The fourth one is from a collection that was just out recently, Not the Time to Be Silent. And the very last one is from my new book, which I've written with my daughter and my granddaughter, called Headspace, which is out right now. And the first three form a sort of set anyway. So I just got to read them one after the other. First one's called 1340 Friday. I sit in a box with a window looking onto a wall. I have one red ear and one blue. In my hand, I hold a button. I stare out the window. All I see is the wall. What noise did I hear? I hesitate. Another. I push the button. My mouth is covered. It hinders my breathing. My red ear beeps. I push the button. Another noise. Another button push. Holding the button as if I'm holding something precious. I don't want to drop it or miss the time to push it. Silence in the box, broken only by my occasional beep in my red ear and the sound of my heart beating. I worry the sound will drown out the noise in my red ear. Then my blue ear beeps. The ritual continues. Beep, push, silence. Eventually, the box is open. I'm allowed to exit. A tall young man with bushy beard stares at me. He confirms a fact that I already knew. I am still profoundly deaf. And this is called I Wish the World Came with Subtitles. It is one of my favorite pieces. And I actually wrote this in a taxi, and when I was sitting in a taxi. I wear hearing aids, and I'm what they call profoundly deaf. I hear, but sometimes have difficulty picking out the actual words people say. I find it hard sometimes to catch all the words my fellow poets are saying when they do their reading. I wish the world came with subtitles. It's bad in my taxi with masks and the screen between me and my passengers to get them to speak clearly and give me their destination. I wish the world came with subtitles. Watching TV, it's great when the programs have closed captions, but hate it when they don't, or some on-demand shows don't, or when the words are behind the actual audio, I wish the world came with subtitles. In this constantly masked off world, concessions are made for many, but city centres are blocked off for disabled, and deaf people can't see what you say. I wish the world came with subtitles. I play my music too loud. My radio goes on too loud. My podcasts go on too loud. I'm not too proud if you ask me to turn it down. I don't know. I don't realize. I can't be sure how it sounds to you. I know how it sounds to me. Loud, but not too. I wish the world came with subtitles. I mean, hearing aids aren't perfect. They don't make things normal. They help. I'm not ignoring you. Your words are important, very important. Well, I can't explain, which is strange for one who uses words to make a point, tell a story, let you know I'm sorry. I wish the world came with subtitles. I take them out. Almost silence. Can barely hear the washing machine, the noisy washing machine when I'm in the kitchen beside it. The morning alarm. It rings for ages, disturbing my wife, waking her when she doesn't need to be awake. I don't hear it until it gradually gets louder. I wish the world came with subtitles. I wasn't born this way. It's hereditary. My grandma on my father's side, then my dad, but he never went and seen about it. Then me, now my daughter. My grandma's aid was big and hung on a strap beneath her top. It squeaked feedback if you went too close. You had to speak into the box to be heard. In a word before subtitles. I do enjoy the silence, switching mine off or taking them out, being alone in my head. Enjoy the silence of being at one with me. I still need to know when I get shouted down for tea. Yes, I should check to see if the volume on my phone is up. But wouldn't it be great if the world came with subtitles? Floating in the air, words destined for only the people that they are meant for. Or flick an imaginary switch and you can see everybody's words, floating, soaring, shouting, swearing, counting, caring. Perfect for finding words for a poem. The silence of constant chatter in a world where words do matter. Choose your font, choose your language, hit translate. What's that? Ah, too late. Your word escaped in the breeze to hide amongst the trees. A world, not perfect, but with subtitles. This one's called Nothing More Beautiful. Watching a film, the sound of metal, a drummer in a rock band going deaf, the frustration he feels as it takes away his livelihood, the moods, the anger, the depression, the suppression of the realization until he must face the truth, the loneliness, pain, the denial of help offered, and sound drift away forever, the separation. At least I can hear some, not silence when he beats the drum. There is nothing more beautiful than spoken words, except perhaps subtitles. This one's about a different kind of listening, or I don't find it as from a new one for us, sorry. It's called Nothing Speaks Louder Than Silence. Alone in a room, the room in the house, the empty house, the house where voices of children were heard, footsteps on the stairs, memories of the cries of stop running, stop that thumping, only echoes now. The house where music came from different teenage rooms, the chatter and nattering of giggly voices going on and on about nothing, the hammering of shelves being put up, the clattering of dishes being loaded into the washer, the slamming of doors. Stop slamming the door! Chopping vegetables in the kitchen, boiling kettles, crushing herbs, sharpening knives. Now, a meal for one, a bed for one. Silence is all, and there is nothing louder than silence. And finally, this one, I think it's self-explanatory what it's about. It's called Me, Here Is What I Remember. All day I sit and stare. I look out the window, the birds pecking in the dead leaves looking for... I see a big green, what are they called? Drive by. People sitting inside, looking out the window, looking at me. Someone comes and stands by my chair, takes my arm and leads me to the... I'm sat down and given things in my hand to eat with. I like mashed potatoes and those wee green things. I move back to my seat at the window, the birds pecking in the dead, looking for insects. Someone takes my arm and I'm sat in a big seat. I sit. Someone arrives and talks to me. They say things. I say, I want to see my mother. You're not my son. Where is my son? Ah, it's James, my grandchild. Why are you with this strange man? Why aren't you with my son? Your dad won't be happy with you. Who are you? They leave. Someone takes my arm. I sit by the window. I see. Ah, look, there is a bus. Thank you.
Everybody unmute for Finn Hall.
Can you hear us, Finn?
Bravo,
Great
bravo,
job.
Finn.
Great job.
The deafness one is my life. You know, I'm just shocked at the way they've allowed subtitles to be removed from modern programs. It's just awful. And I have a fight with my local community cinema because they won't let subtitles be on the screen because it will irritate the other customers. Well, deafness is a lot more bloody irritating than subtitles. But anyway, there you go. That's my view.
There
But
was
it's my,
there was a
so
cinema in Aberdeen just closed down the end of last year. I never got into it. And it used to have evenings where they would show films with subtitles, and they show them with audio description as well for people who needed it too. Sadly, it was an independent cinema, and just it closed down just before Christmas there.
well, this is just in the community, just in our community centre, and quite often there's only 7 people in, and they're all my age. So I would imagine that they've all got similar difficulties, you know. But anyway, and nobody's ever said to me, "Oh, this is irritating." My son-in-law once did when I
Would
put them
somebody
on.
else like to share something in response to Finn?
Exquisite, Finn. Just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
I truly appreciated that. It was wonderful. It was nice to hear from someone else's perspective for a change. And I think that's what most people need to hear and understand and comprehend. And that's why I hope you saved the chat, because there are wonderful comments in the chat. And if we're really going to talk about inclusivity, then it requires that we really truly do what we say we're going to do and be inclusive. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's like one of those song lyrics, like you don't appreciate something until it's gone, you know. And then you somehow realize, and then I guess it's also trying to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, you know, that we don't always appreciate. I mean, I think I've been very fortunate in my life not to have had any kind of major debilitation like that. You know, all my senses have generally been functioning. But mind you, I've done my best to try and disable them at times. But I always end up conscious again and I'm back in the real world. But yeah, I really appreciate. I think I've heard a couple of those before that you've done on spoken word, Finn. But you know, you never get tired of hearing them again because they're so like wonderfully lyrical, but also profound and quite complex in their structures and in their ideas. So yeah, thanks very much. It was a beautiful prompt for today's session there.
Finn's poetical content is one thing, but the way he tells his story, the tone, the enunciation, the sense of engagement, the delivery, everything flows in like a vibrant river, you know. And it's so profound and so lyrical, like you said, and so silky, so smooth. So you know, salutations to Finn.
Yeah, it was a great set, Finn. I really enjoyed it, and you know, it's a great prompt as well. And I particularly love the idea of the world having subtitles, even though, you know, I've got good hearing. You know, it's a wonderful idea. It's you know, it would be great.
It's the concept of universal design for learning, that one accommodation that's accessible to one group actually benefits so many others. And I just want you to know, Finn, that this is the first time I'm hearing your this. I had no idea that you live with profound deafness, and thank you for sharing that and being who you are and listening so carefully to us. Uh, it's what a gift that you have given us, all of us. So I'm going to thank you once again, and thank you, poets, for bringing all your work. We're going to be listening, and please, after I close the show, I'm going to stop recording, and then we'll listen to Lantern Carrier for his poem about listening. So once again, uh, thank you, poets, for modeling for us what it means to listen to one another. We are lovable, we are capable, we are valuable, we are able to listen and voice the ideas and thoughts within us. We are capable of listening and voicing the ideas of those around us. And from the poems that we've heard today, we recognize that there are people who feel like they're not being heard, and we're capable of being friends by listening. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Please stay.